ladies and gentlemen. This is Jordan Sather, and here today I have the amazing William Tompkins.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. So, when did you first decide to come forward with all of your information?
That was actually a long time ago, and I actually did not feel that I was interested in wanting to express some of this because much that I had done in the Navy was not a normal situation. And I did make notes about different meetings, and I kept some of the documents that I did that 4 years that I was in the Navy. But I was not interested in releasing this information. Mm-hmm. It took quite a long time, and actually, when I got later on with Bob Wood, he and I sort of got together. He was at Douglas, and I had been at Douglas, and it was just sort of felt really the right thing to do. And so we decided to put together this book, which was selected by extraterrestrials. And we found that there was more information than we could get in the one book. So actually, we were even planning on 3 books. Wow. And I think that the second book is going to be finished here probably in about 3 months.
Fantastic. That's awesome. What was your feeling when you first found out that you and Dr. Wood were working at the same company together, Douglas Aerospace?
That was surprising. A friend of ours told me when I talked to him on some of the subject, and he suggested that I call Bob Wood, and this was years later. And he gave me Bob's phone number, and I called him, and we talked. And it was interesting that we had both worked at the same company. We knew all of the same top people, and yet we hadn't met. I was there 12 and a half years. Actually, Bob was there, I think, 30 years. And we hadn't met, but we had been actually working on the same program. It's very interesting to me.
Do you know how many people were working on that program at all?
We actually had a secret think tank inside of Douglas. And I had, before that, I had spent 4 years in the Navy and working on extraterrestrial programs. And I had worked at Northrop for 2.5 years after I got out of the Navy. I did work at North American for a few months. I worked at Lockheed, and of course, this is interesting. I had these packages which I brought to all these different companies, which were really contracts. And now I get, this is, you asked me how I got to see Bob, really. I get flashes. I get flashes about information. This is a little different than remote viewing. My flash will be like I will see 4 or 5 planets in my mind. Then I'll see one planet. Then I'll see a location on that planet, and then I go there. Okay? So it's a little bit like remote viewing. I got one of those flashes when I was working at Lockheed over in Burbank. And that was that something very, very important was going on over at Santa Monica in Douglas. And so I quit Lockheed. I used my models to get me into the door again. And so they hired me into the wind tunnel group. And different than getting into the other companies using the models, the vice president of the company knew about my models. So actually, I put 40 of the models in a window of a department store in Santa Monica. And of course, Douglas gets to put all their advertising about Douglas airplanes and everything up on the background. It was sort of fun. So him knowing about my models, he knew about my background in that 4 years in the Navy. So he had me hired out of the wind tunnel into engineering. And I actually didn't do much in engineering. I was introduced to the fellow who was in charge of electronics and communication, a fellow by the name of Pete Dion, and prince of a guy. So he then told me a little bit about what he wanted me to do in the company, and it turns out that Douglas had a secret think tank inside of Douglas that I don't think Bob Wood even knew was there, okay? And so Pete didn't have a card to get into it, but he buzzed into it to the receptionist inside. He told her who we wanted to bring in, and she comes and opens the door and takes me in, and Pete doesn't go in. He's not authorized to go into this secret think tank. So I spent 12 and a half years at Douglas. At least 50% of it was in the tank, and then later on I became engineering section chief of the Apollo program. Actually, my position was for all types of test equipment for our new contract, which was for the Apollo upper stage, which was the S4B stage of Apollo. Now, a lot wasn't understood and hasn't even been brought out yet, but Douglas, inside the secret think tank, we had been working on programs, not just to do the Apollo program. That was old stuff. We had been working on missions to go out in space and build naval base and research facilities on every planet in the solar system or the moon. Now this is way, way before NASA even existed. We were doing these secret studies ourselves, not by the Navy, but for the Navy. This is way before Space Navy even started. And we were tremendously interested in what was taking place out in the galaxy. I was able to utilize a great deal of the information that I spent in the Navy, where I was staffed to Admiral Ricobata. Now, do you want me to explain a little of that?
Go for it, absolutely.
All right. This is very strange. There was a group of people who were studying extraterrestrial, and this is kind of, I got to figure out the best way to get into this. A single Navy operative went into Germany. This is like 1939. He didn't believe this, but there was very strange organizations and different research groups all over, not just Germany, but in the occupied countries too. And strangely enough, Germany was putting in production fantastic vehicles that had literally, they didn't have wings on these aircraft. They didn't have empennage or tails. They had landing gears. Some of them were triangular shape, some were rectangular shape, some were round shape, like a saucer. All these different vehicles were Draco Navy vehicles that the Draco reptilian civilization people had come to the planet. They had selected Germany as being their support organization on the planet. So what happened was, this spy was inside of German secret laboratories. He spoke brilliant German. He knew all the dialects. He was a German family living in the United States, an American, but he's in Germany. And unlike many spies, he knew much about Germany. He knew where the facilities were. And so he, being a spy for the Navy, found out all of these fantastic situations that were going on inside of Germany. And this is an important point. Instead of him going to his boss, coming back to the United States, he went directly to the Secretary of the Navy, Forrestal. So he explained to Forrestal all this fantastic thing that was happening all over Germany or in the war. And Forrestal seemed to believe this spy. So Forrestal then structured an organization of 24 of the top Navy spies. And they were going to go into all of the areas in Germany and find out what is really going on, okay? Now, this is particularly interesting. Forrestal gets tapped on the shoulder. He gets told, don't select a Navy officer to head up these operatives. What? He's told to select somebody who had never been in Annapolis. Now, almost every Navy officer, whether they're a 1-star or lieutenant commander, they've all been through Annapolis to learn how to be a Navy officer.
So why was he selected?
So, it turns out Forrestal is told that every book in the libraries, every book in the colleges, every book in the universities, every book on this planet is misinformation. It's misinformation. So, which is initiated by the Draco reptilians as far back as 6,000 years ago. All over this planet, books are not telling the truth. Whether it's medical, whether it's interplanetary, whether it's science, every person, every PhD on the planet has been given misinformation the 4 or 5 years that he's in the university. So, the Secretary of the Navy selects Ricobata. He's not even an American. He comes over here with his family. He goes to school here. He goes to the second year in high school. He leaves school. He joins the Navy as a third-class seaman, works his way up in the Navy. Now he's a commander, okay? That commander is selected by the Secretary of the Navy to head up all of these operatives to go back into Germany and find out what's going on. Because that individual had never had misinformation given to him about every technical field on the planet. This may sound like insanity. This is what happened. So Ricabada then transfers from a command facility back east to North Island Naval Air Station. All of a sudden, he's a captain. He doesn't go there. The first place he goes to is 4 aircraft companies, 1 research facility and 1 medical advanced research facility, Scripps. He goes to Caltech, he goes to Douglas, he goes to Lockheed, he goes to North America, he goes to Northrop. He tells every top technical personnel in those organizations they're going to receive a package from the Navy. This package is going to be a contract. This is not a competitive bid contract between different organizations. This is a specific contract to, say, Lockheed in Burbank. Okay. Now, we talked about Ricabada. We have to talk a little bit about Bill Tompkins, okay? He's just a dumb kid in Hollywood. He's in Gardner Grade School in 1935. He's in trouble with the teacher because he's always doing the wrong thing. So she makes him sit in the front seat in the class, okay? I hear a roar. I'm in class. It gets real loud. This is a class that's only 4 blocks from Hollywood Boulevard. I hear this roar. Gets to me. I stand up. I look at the teacher. She gives me a dirty look, and I run out of the class. I run down the hallway. I go out the front door, and here is this massive spaceship coming up from Santa Monica over Hollywood. Well, it's really not a spaceship, okay? It's the USS Macon dirigible, okay? This dirigible is flying in one of the Santa Ana weather conditions. In that particular area, there's a group of mountains which makes Hollywood. Behind that is the desert. We get Santa Ana winds which come from the desert towards the ocean. Now the dirigible's coming in from Santa Monica. So he's in a heavy headwind. Flying next to him are 2 biplanes. That means 2 wings, okay? They're flying next to him. You can see as he's coming over, they're hardly moving. A great big structure comes out of the center of this big dirigible. One of the biplanes flies over and hooks on this crane, which carries him up inside. We can't see this, but took him forward and sat him down in an enormous hangar inside this enormous dirigible. Comes back down again. The other plane comes over, hooks on, he goes up, and he goes inside. The Navy was demonstrating their new dirigible and the capabilities of being an aircraft carrier that's a spacecraft carrier. Wow, okay? Now we have hangar decks and aircraft carriers. Now we got hangar decks in dirigibles. This was in 1935. Okay, later on, all kinds of things happen. I make a whole group of U.S. model ships of U.S. Navy ships. And actually, over time, I actually built 300, okay? Very scaled models. And I just want to spend a minute on how some of those got built.
Absolutely.
We're living in Hollywood, and so my dad takes us down to Long Beach. And the Navy has these very large, you'd say they're lifeboats, that they're powered launches, which takes a large number of the sailors back to port or back onto the ships. So now at that time, this is like 1940, the Navy is tremendously concerned about the Japanese buildup in the Pacific. So they get a whole bunch of rocks. They build a massive breakwater in front of Long Beach. Now we have an enormous Navy harbor. So we bring the ships down from up at Seattle, we bring them down from San Francisco, they bring them up from San Diego, and now the battle groups can form, communicate together, and go out on a mission. Even more worried about what's happening in the Eastern Pacific, the Navy takes most of the Atlantic Fleet down through the Panama Canal and bring them up past Mexico and put them in this new harbor.
So you have a huge fleet right there in that harbor.
Okay, so now if you stand on the beach at Long Beach, you've got massive numbers of ships you can look at. All right, so my dad takes us down to Long Beach to get on these launches and go aboard these ships. Now you can't use a camera, but I can have a little pad to get my details to put on my ship models. Okay? You're saying this got nothing to do with what Bob Wood is going to talk about, okay? But this is how I got into this thing. So the launch gets us out to, of course, what I want, an aircraft carrier. Because there's a photograph in some of the released newspaper articles of me with one of my 6 or 8 ships, and then my big carrier, the Lexington, which is now the largest carrier on the planet. Just like the Macon was the largest dirigible on the planet. Okay? All right. So I get on board. My dad, my brother, and I get on board, and we go up, climb up to a door that's in the side, not to the deck, but a door halfway up in this enormous ship, largest carrier on the planet. Now we're in this enormous area where they park all the airplanes. Okay, now we go to more stairways up. The Navy calls them ladders. Okay, so we take the ladder up to the flight deck. Okay, I need to know what Navy radars look like. I knew that some of them were round and some of them were rectangular. So I walk out onto the flight deck, I look up at the bridge, and here's a great big rectangle up on top of the mast. So I find the shadow. I walk the length of it, across it, the length again, and back to the start. And I make a note on that. Now, while the rest of them are looking around the ship, I walk up to the bow, because up there are steam catapults. Well, what do you need catapults for? All right, when you're in a battle condition, you fill up that flight deck with every plane you've got. In this particular case, 89 airplanes can go on the Lexington, but there's no deck left. We're right up to the front. So the Navy builds these secret steam catapults. Billy Tompkins goes up to the bow, he gets the width of them, he finds out how close they are, how far they're back from the front part of the bridge, and he marks all this down. Now, I I walk the whole flight deck to the back because there's more secret stuff back there. When you're in a pilot coming in to land on an aircraft carrier, you pull a lever. This lever drops a long bar that's hanging now behind you with a hook on it. On the aft part of the flight deck are cables. 6 cables, 4 cables, whatever. They're all the way across the flight deck. So your hook grabs one of those and stops you, so you don't go crashing into all the airplanes that are up front, okay? All right, now, this is secret. So I walk to the stern of the flight deck, and I walk the number of steps it takes me to get to the first cable. Then I walk to the next cable, and I mark that down. Is there 4 cables? Is there 6 cables? Is there 8 cables? No, there were 6 cables. So I marked that down. Now I know from the back of the flight deck where I put these cables on my mount. But it's secret. So on my way home, driving home,